Hello, today is Thursday, June 10th, 2025, and we have some major severe weather changes coming up. And I'm going to give a tropical update also. In the Eastern Pacific, what was Hurricane Barbara has decreased into tropical storm status and is expected to become a post-tropical cyclone or tropical depression by tomorrow, by 1 a.m. this morning. So we aren't expecting many impacts from there, but we do have tropical storm Cosmin up here, which currently has wind speeds of 50 miles an hour, and it is also expected to weaken into tropical depression status by tomorrow. By the end of tomorrow, it is expected to not be anything anymore, but then we will have this back here, which has a 10% probability of developing in the next 2 days or 48 hours, and it has an 80% chance of development in the next 7 days, so an overall high chance of development. Now let's talk about the severe weather. Today we have a day 1 slight risk of severe weather, a 2 out of 5. We currently have a severe thunderstorm warning in that area. All in all, right now we have 2 severe thunderstorm warnings. Both of them are right here, and then we have a separate marginal risk in eastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and northwestern Florida. And another marginal risk over here in California, Nevada, Oregon, and Idaho. And a general thunderstorm risk stretching basically from Canada down to Mexico out towards the Atlantic Ocean. And then it's basically the same. It is the same for the hail probability. There's a 15% probability of damaging hail within 25 miles of any point in south central Texas, and a 5% risk surrounding that in southeastern New Mexico. And then there is another 5% risk in eastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, southwestern Georgia, and northwestern Florida. And then there is a day 2 3 separate day 2 marginal risk for severe weather. 1 in Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, South Dakota again, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois, and I think that very top sliver of Indiana. And for the day 2 outlook, there are 3 separate marginal risk for severe weather, 1 out of 5. 1 in Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, South Dakota, North Dakota, and then another one in southeastern South Dakota, Nebraska, Ohio, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Chicago, and Illinois. And there's a 2% tornado probability in eastern Texas. And there are 3 separate 5% wind risk. 1 up here in the northern U.S., another one out here in the Midwest, and down here in Texas and New Mexico also. And then basically same areas for the hail risk, just a little different. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, and Indiana, and then also in southern Texas. And then there are 2 separate day 3 marginal risk. 1 up here in Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota, and another one down here in southern Texas. And these are driven by a 5%, both are driven by a 5% risk for any mode of severe weather within 25 miles of any point. There doesn't really look to be a lot going on in the tropics other than in the Eastern Pacific. This over here, right here in the Eastern Pacific is what they're watching for, is what that 80% chance of development is for. And then we have, other than that, I do think we could possibly see some early season development, but for the most part, I'm expecting the development to hold off into the later into the season of hurricane season. This right here is what we currently have the slight risk over here for and the marginal risk over here for. And then right here in this area is what they're worried that could produce some severe weather, but I don't see that really being any organized severe weather threat. Unlike down here and down here, this could, what I'm most concerned about in this is this right here, specifically that line right there. That could produce some severe weather. But let's continue looking over the next 48 hours, and we do expect to see this potentially turn into what looks to be like a derecho, which for those of you that don't know, a derecho is a line of thunderstorms that produce damaging winds for a long time. Like for a derecho to form, for this to produce a derecho, it need to produce damaging winds in this whole entire path. But let's continue looking to see what this is looking to do, and it is looking to kind of fall apart, which is good. But this is what they have the tornado threat for, because you kind of see that line of storms break up into those singular cells. The most area I would be worried about for tornadoes is where the SPC has their outlook, which is in that area. But you can still see tornadoes outside of this. I would also don't necessarily think there's going to be a tornado, but remember that this is showing the possibility that this is looking like it has the possibility to produce a tornado, but it is less than 2%. That is why the SPC does not have that indicated in their outlook. So let's continue on, and we kind of see that severe threat dying down until right here. This could produce some damaging winds, damaging hail, and potentially some tornadoes. The most for the tornadoes, or I would be concerned with, is this most southern cell, which would be over the water, so that would only affect like boaters in this region. But it is something to watch out for, something to keep an eye on. But let's continue going out, and then we kind of see that turn into a bow echo, which could produce some damaging winds and such. But that is the furthest this goes out. So this is what your radar could look like over the next 48 hours. So keep an eye out on that. Let me tell you, that cape in this region is most definitely there to produce some tornadoes. So if you are in this region tomorrow, definitely have your weather alerts on. The NAM 3K is actually showing possibly a worst case scenario, because it is showing up to possibly 6,000 joules per kilogram in some areas, which for those of you that don't know, that is 6 times the amount needed to produce severe weather. But let's see how this lines up with the storm cells moving throughout the same area, because it could be some issues. Like if this right here, typically in this kind of setup right here, the reason why it kind of jumps up so like a couple thousand joules per kilogram is because it is looking like there will be a dry line set up somewhere in this area, which is what makes those cape, the joules per kilogram in cape skyrocket. But if these storms lag behind that dry line, it would be a better case scenario. Not saying they couldn't produce some severe weather, but it wouldn't be the worst case scenario. It's kind of what it's kind of why whenever we had that high risk over here in this region earlier this year, why those storms didn't turn out. They were still really bad, but they didn't turn out to be as bad as as the models were showing them being. By the way, before we go to look at the storms, what I mean by a dry line right here is, if you look right here, we see a pretty sharp change in the dew points, meaning that like right here, these dew points are higher in the 70s, and these dew points over here are in the 50s and 60s, which is enough to produce severe weather. But typically, the higher the dew point, the more likely to produce severe weather. Well, bad news for us. It does look to be that these storms will be in the same area as those 5,000 joules per kilogram, which is just crazy. And right here, I mean, just look at this. These storms are going to blow up, which is typically what we see with these 5,000 joules per kilogram. Let's see what the severe hazard is like right here at this time. It is showing, I wouldn't be surprised if it, yeah, severe. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a tornado out of this, because if you look at this, that dashed white line is the parcel track, and it is not being capped, or the EL level, equilibrium level, until almost 15 kilometers up. And if you look right here, hold on, my pen's not working. If you live right here in this region, my mind blanked, sorry. Not if you live right here in this region, but like, look at that low level wind shear. I mean, that's just crazy. That wind shear is crazy. And just look at this as we go up, especially that low level wind shear in the lowest kilometer. I mean, that I would not be surprised to see at least some spinning supercells out of that, because that is looking very suspicious. What is a concerning look for me is tomorrow, right here, the NAM3K is showing this a little more than HRRR. Right here is where I think we could see some potentially devastating, damaging winds. Don't take that as I'm saying that's going to happen. I do not want you to take that. What I'm trying to say is that if you live in, well, actually, if you live in that region tomorrow, watch out for, mainly what I'm worried about is this system right here. Let's look where it's showing this tracking. Oh, well, good news. Kind of showing it fall apart right here, but this right here and this right here could be potentially, could produce potentially some tornadoes. Not likely to be those big time tornadoes, but it is showing around the 13th. It is showing this reorganizing into a strong line of storms right here, and that is something we still need to watch out for. So just watch out. And then next model I'm going to show you is what you could potentially see your weather be like across the US over the next 16 days. It's like, according to the GFS, over the next 16 days, it is looking to be very rainy, especially across portions of the south to eastern US, with possibly up to 8 inches of rain falling in South Alabama and Northwest Florida and extreme eastern Mississippi. Now this is what you could expect to experience. This is what your radar could look like over the next 16 days. This will change. This is not. Further out we go, the more inaccurate it will be. So these models are subject to change, but this is kind of giving us an idea on what's going to happen. So as we go further out, as supported by those potentially up to 8 inches of rain, it is looking to be very rainy across the eastern portion of the U.S., mainly in potentially some droughting out here because of that dry line setup right here, mainly making all the storms fire up in this region, producing rain in this region. But it is you could still see some potential rain, and this right here in Mexico could potentially be a tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm. Not likely. If it does even turn into anything, it will likely not be any higher than a tropical depression or tropical storm. But something to watch out, because this is still 240 hours out, so these models are subject to change. So keep that in mind, but this is what your future radar could potentially look like over the next 6. If you like this video, I post videos like this all the time, once daily, every night. I try to do it every night so that you can wake up in the morning and watch it and kind of know what your weather's going to be in your area that day. And if you like this video, please consider liking it and subscribing. Thanks for watching this, and see you next time.